Okay. Hello, everyone. So today we're going to start talking about why English became such an important language. Let me share the presentation. So basically, the first question for us is to understand how English became such an important language. And basically, let's start talking about um, history. In the 16th century, the British started colonizing a lot of places. So, what happened back then? And what was different for example, the Roman Empire? Even though the Roman Empire happened much before the British Empire started colonizing a lot of different territories in all the continents, the what happened with the Roman Empire was that they started spreading with the land. And what was very different? Well, the British Empire started colonizing different territories, but they used to travel in ships because this was an island. They just couldn't like spread using the land, so they started using ships, and they went to different countries. I mean, to different continents, and they went to different territories. And basically, they started to establish overseas colonies. And by the end of the 18th century, the British Empire had grown a lot. They had colonies in a few parts of India, in a lot of different areas of Africa, in the Caribbean, in Canada, and what was to become the United States. So they started establishing these colonies even after the American independence. And this included areas even besides Africa, in Australia and New Zealand, and after the First World War in the Middle East. So, what else happened here? After the First World War, it started to replace French in the diplomatic world because the Treaty of Versailles was translated to English. So, if you remember, in the 18th century, French was like the diplomatic language. But after the First World War, uh, English started to become very important, especially because they started to do all these different economic transactions as the United States started investing in the rebuilding of Europe. But after the Second World War, it was more used for these commercial transactions. The United States were investing a lot of money in the rebuilding of Europe in general, not only the part that lost, but the part that won, because all of this war happened in that territory. So it started to be very common to do all these commercial transactions in English. And then what were other factors that influenced in the spreading of the language? Well, uh, after the Second World War, let's think about the 50s, the film and the music industry started to become very popular. So they place the language as an international cultural reference. So we have this movies from Hollywood and this music that was not only from the United States but also from the United Kingdom. So you can think about the Rolling Stones, the Elvis Presley, and all of these big stars, rock and roll stars. And since they were singing in English, they started this movement in which a lot of music bands started singing in English. And now, what is happening today? Well, all of the technological advances and the internet have placed this language again as a very important language, as the main language. And as you know, English is by far the main language used in the internet. There are more internet references in English than any other languages. And it's really interesting to note also that 8 out of the 10 most visited sites are American. So their main language is English. And now let's think about another thing. Let's think about English as this lingua franca. What is the definition of a lingua franca? Basically, a lingua franca is a language that you can use to communicate with other people without taking into account their native languages. So right now, it is a very dominant language because since a lot of people start studying this English as a second language, they can communicate with other people that have English as a second or as a foreign language without taking into account their native languages. And to exemplify this, we can know that there are more non-native speakers of English than native speakers of English. We can count today almost 1 billion non-native speakers versus the 500,000 speakers that there are today of English. No? And this takes the language to have to arrive to this situation. Almost 4 out of 5 English-speaking interactions happen between non-native speakers of English. And basically, this is why English has become the language of travel. And also, a lot of important communications, like, for example, international aviation, are happen in English. And what is another important thing about this language? Most of the academic research and pedagogical advances are published in English journals. So all the scientific communication, all the communication for traveling is taken place in English. And what is another important, well, not important, but interesting aspect of this language? Well, as you already know, you as Spanish speakers, you know the RAE, no? There are a lot of languages academies in the main European languages. But what is different between this and English? What happens in English is that they never have had a formal regulator. So another thing that makes this language very interesting is that it has a fastest growing lexicon. That means that the vocabulary is forever growing, and because there's no anyone saying if you can use or not use a specific language. You have basically dictionaries as a way of regulating the language, and basically because it's also a big business, because they are selling like updates yearly, or yearly updates of the language. They are allowed to grow and grow, you know? And if there are different studies about this, but you can say that English has crossed the 1 million word threshold, and this happened almost 15 years ago. No? And what is different in Spanish? In Spanish, because we have an academy that is regulating the language, and that it takes a long time to say whether this word will be accepted or not in the language. We have a lot of Americanismos in Spanish, but basically we only have about 70,000 words. So we can say that there are 10 times less words in Spanish than in English. Okay, so we're going to continue with this activity in the next video. Thank you very much.